Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today we're going to discuss another skill, and this time it will be Avalanche. You guys have voted, you have decided, and it was a close call. Death Seal was right behind it. Third, you had Dreadshade, but with this we're going to go ahead and do Avalanche, and then I will follow it up with a Death Seal, a Dreadshade, then a Puncture, and then a Shatter Strike. I'm going to try and get all 5 of these done this weekend and just knock every one of them out on this list. I know at least one of you that was looking forward to a Puncture discussion will be happy about that. Alright, without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking the pros, cons, and some suggestions for the skill Avalanche. Alright, let's start with some basic facts about Avalanche. Now, as far as I can remember back, I don't recall ever having a patch that actually changed anything in Avalanche. There might have been a slight buff or nerf or a little bit of balance with it, but as far as I can remember, the only things that have changed is like adding idols that allowed to proc it, or there were some uniques that were affected around it, but the tree itself has stayed the same since beta was released. On top of that, there are 25 nodes inside of its skill tree. This is about the average number for a skill. What this means is that overall it's on the lesser side to get a rework. Now, while it has been around since beta, it's not a skill that has really ever been deemed in full need of a rework. So in the future, I would assume it would see some small changes, but I don't see Avalanche ever getting a full rework. That being said, we're going to go over the pros, the cons, add in some suggestions, so hopefully if this ever gets watched or if enough people get behind it in the future, maybe one of those suggestions might just make it through. So don't be afraid to throw your suggestion for it down in the comments below, because there's a chance it could get read and perhaps a version of it could get added later. So to begin with, we're going to go ahead and hover over every node and talk about each one, the pros of it, the cons of it, and how we would change that node if we could, if it's necessary. Some nodes will be easier to talk about than others, such as just added flat damage. We're going to skip over those pretty quick, but other ones that do interesting effects we'll discuss a little bit more in depth. The first thing that I will say about this, I love Avalanche. It is one of the main DPS skills on the Shaman. I love that it has variety to where you can channel it, not channel it. I love that you can choose it as a cold or a physical. You can play it as a stun or a freeze. There's a lot of options. You can build it with some synergies into some totems. You can get some minions out of it. The only thing that I don't like about it is that it doesn't synergize with any other skills in terms of being able to proc anything or have any sort of like meteor fireball connection. Hopefully that gets added in the future, and like I said, most newer skills have that, but this one's been around since beta, so if something does change with it, that would be the area that I would expect something to revolve the change around. Alright, so getting into the nodes, let's start in the top left. Number 1, Mountain Peak. Avalanche falls in a circle around you. Now, if I were to use this without putting any points into it, and I channeled it here, let me get Avalanche, and I channeled it, you'll notice that it goes wherever I target. That's what it does. If I put 1 point into Avalanche in the Mountain Peak, if we go ahead and put that 1 point here, they now fall in a circle around you. So I could aim over here, it's not going to go over here. It's automatically, whenever I channel it, going to instantly be around me, kind of like Elemental Nova is, where it has an area around you. And you can see you have these falling. It looks like it's a little graphically kind of messed up right now. They are falling with some intense speed. It's normally not that fast. It might just be my graphics card or something. But either way, it looks like you can channel it for quite a while, and that puts it just around your character. The next one we have is Precision. Avalanche is now targetable. So the first way you had it, without any points in it, you were able to target where it goes. The second point that we put in there then made it to where it's only around you. It doesn't matter where you point, it's just going to fall around you. If we put 1 more point in Precision, this adds to the mana cost. You can now target it. What this means is when I target it, it will only fall in a circle where you target. It doesn't actually move with your cursor. So far, the first 2 points we put in this actually seems to hurt the skill. So if I aim over here and I start it and then I move my mouse over here, even though my character is following my mouse here, it is still over here targeting that same spot. So here's the problem with this. It's weird, and it seems like if you had the ability to target where it goes and make it fall in that area to begin with, why would you want to put those 2 points into the skill tree? So I could definitely see something changing with these two in the future, as I find both of them useless. In fact, I don't know of anybody who's done an Avalanche build that uses these two and doesn't go past that to go ahead and just get into the wild path and make it no longer channelable. I have never seen these. People who channel it just build into the other side of the tree, and they want to be able to target where it goes and have it move with their mouse cursor so that they can chase the enemies that are moving with them. With that, one more point in wild path means it's no longer channelable. It adds a huge mana cost to it, and it now has an 8-second cooldown. What this does mean, since it's no longer channelable, it loses the channel tag, and instead it just automatically keeps throwing down meteors for 5 seconds, and the cooldown is 8 seconds. You can build into the duration, which will help. So if I go ahead and take that point and I throw Avalanche out here, we got to wait for that 8-second cooldown, but once it's off, we can go ahead and cast it. It will go where you target because you've taken that node, and it will only fall in that area for the 5 seconds. So it's not bad. What it means is you no longer have to channel. You get the benefits of being able to target where it goes, but it does only fall in that one area. It's not going to follow mobs around. Of course, then you can build a little bit deeper. You can get into that duration, so you can get up to 100% uptime with it. And then with 1 point in Hailstorm, you can now make it follow you as you move as an autocast skill, which means you can put it on autocast, have 100% uptime. It's not instacast. If I'm moving and I do it, my character will stop, but now it will follow me as I go, everywhere I go, so I can try and kite all the mobs behind me and just kind of have high move speed, run ahead, and let it hit. This is the most popular way that people have played Avalanche, and it's one of the most damaging because you can get all of the mobs just chasing you, and it increases your survivability because you're not standing still, you're not getting hit, and you're doing great damage to everything behind you, killing them as they try and follow you. So it's one of the most successful ways that I've seen it played. With that said, as we go up to the top, you have mana efficiency, which can help reduce that massive mana cost, which here is 83, but if you go ahead and throw 4 points into that, you can knock it down from 83 down to 60. Something else that I wanted to point out is we're not going to actually do the build versions. As we discuss all the nodes, I'm going to actually take some of them to discuss them and show you how it works when you build and take those specific nodes, and then we'll just kind of redirect as we go into different parts of the tree. So I'm not going to do those final builds because really all it's going to do is just kind of repeat what I'm showing you now, and it'll kind of shorten the videos as these were starting to actually get pretty long. We were getting into 30-minute skill discussions, which is a bit long just to go over the nodes and what it does. So next we're going to go into the bottom right side of the tree. Here, Harsh Winter adds a more damage modifier to the skill, very helpful if you're trying to do more damage with it. You have Rockfall. This turns all of the cold damage into straight physical damage. So normally this skill has both physical and cold, and I recommend if you're trying to do really good damage with it, pick one and stick with one. The problem is they're not elemental together. Physical is completely different from the elemental cold, fire, and lightning, and so trying to separate and raise both of those, unless you have global damage on everything, which would benefit both, you do more damage with it if you just take a single attack. So you want to convert it to physical or you want to convert it to cold, and that's the best way to get high DPS out of it. If you're not worried about DPS, then don't worry about that. But here you can convert it to all physical damage, and all the freeze rate multiplier that you have turns it into increased stun chance. Now that's only for the freeze rate multiplier bonuses that are in the tree. Now that's something you want to pay attention to, because when I first read it, I didn't read that part, and I thought that I could put freeze rate on all of my gear as well as putting stun chance on all of my gear, and that it would all get converted into stun chance, and I was going to try and build a perma-stun build, but I totally missed the part where it said from this tree. This was a really long time ago, but it totally ruined my stun build because I was wondering how when I converted it, I still wasn't stunning anything, and it turned out that I had 2000% freeze rate multiplier for no reason. So reading is always key in this game. Then we got Heavy Snow, which increases your stun chance, pretty obvious. Winter Buildup reduces the mana cost. This node, I don't think I've ever seen anyone in my life use it. I tested it once just to put 1 point in it to see if you had taken the high mana cost, if it actually just took 1 mana off of it, and it did. So what was horrible about that is you had an 83 mana cost, and you could put 5 points in this and reduce that 83 mana cost to a 78, which was useless. Like, what's that really saving me? Now, in the channeled version, where the channel cost is 20 per second, taking that 5 and reducing your channel cost to 15 per second, if you're playing it as a channeled build, is more effective. That's 25% of the cost, not 3% of the cost. So that's a huge difference. So for the channeled version, it is actually a pretty good node. But like I said, most people don't play Avalanche that way. So I feel like this should have a hybrid effect, where if you're playing playing it as channeled, it stays as is. If you're playing it as a cast and forget, it should be a percentage base, probably 10% of the mana costs, 10% more mana efficiency, which would kind of be a copycat of the natural occurring, but that's what it should be for that in order to actually have a better effect and make it worth taking. Then we've got 3 points that you can put into grounding. This gives you more hit damage while there is a totem active. It doesn't matter where the totem is, as long as you have one active. This is very powerful if you are trying to do more damage, as you can get a 45% more damage multiplier out of it. Then we have where it synergizes with the storm totem just a little bit. If you have a storm totem that is in range of Avalanche, then your Avalanche hits deal additional base lightning damage. Now, this node, while the idea behind it is awesome and thematic, and it's like, oh, if you have an Avalanche going right where your Storm Totem is, you can synergize and get a boost of damage. The problem with this, base lightning damage does nothing for a skill that's scaled with cold and physical. Doesn't make any sense, because what? The only thing that's going to scale with that is spell damage. But you can still get a little bit, just a little bit of added damage out of it, which is okay. The other thing is, what is in range of Storm Totem? So you have your Storm Totem, and your Storm Totem doesn't move, and then Avalanche has to be cast inside of that. So you would just have to run circles around your Storm Totem, bring enemies in, which is totally possible to do, and kiting like that is possible. But for the little bit of effect that you actually get for 10 added lightning damage, it's really not that much, especially when you're talking about, you know, your two-handed weapon can have up to 120 adaptive spell damage that's already scaling with either the physical or the cold that you've built into. 10 flat lightning damage is really nothing for just trying to stay in one area. That definitely needs a boost, or that also needs to be converted into physical or cold, depending on which way you build it, or even better, add a node like that that converts your Avalanche into all lightning damage when it is next to a Storm Totem. So instead of adding 10 lightning damage, your Avalanches actually become lightning infused and all damage is converted to lightning on it. That would be epic. So that would be my suggestion for Storm Slide. Then we got the elemental bonds, and if you played around with this, you probably realized after a short amount of time it's kind of useless, but it is cool to have little minion rock golem things running around attacking. It is actually pretty cool, but they decay over time, so they don't last until they die, which means you can't stack up an infinite amount of them, which I guess is cool because we'd break the game if we did that. But unless you really build into minions, which you're really not going to do, especially as a shaman that's building around cold and physical damage for Avalanche, they're just kind of useless. But I do like the idea behind them. They were fun to play with and try, but they just weren't that viable. And when I say not that viable, well, let me go ahead and show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and put those points in. We got the 3 points in Harsh Winter, we got the 1 point in Grounding, and then we have the 3 points in Elemental Bond. So when an Avalanche comes flying down to the ground, there's a 6% chance for it to convert into a cute little rock guy. So let's go ahead and look at that. Let me cast it here, channel it for a second. Let's go ahead and do that, see if we can get some rock. There we go. Look at that beauty. I'm not going to lie. He could probably use a little bit of a graphical update. He doesn't look like much, and he dies relatively very quickly. Although if you put some minion health regen, I believe it does affect them, so they actually survive for quite a bit longer, but that health decay is potent. Well, let's go ahead and see what kind of damage they do. So here we'll cast it again. Let's get a rock elemental here. That 6% chance is really low. This could take all of my mana just to get one any day now. Come on. There we go. Whew, right at the last second. And attack. What are you doing? You know how to attack? Here, try from over there. And there you go. So, like I said, pretty much useless. They do attack enemies when enemies get close enough to them to actually be in the hitbox, but their targeting of the training dummy is something else. I tested that earlier and I was like, what? But there you go. That's why I don't use them. Getting into the next part of the tree, we have Stormfront, which is boulder frequency. You can get up to 20% increased frequency for how many avalanches you actually get. And with 4 points in intensity, you can also have 100% increased fall speed, which means they come down much quicker and you can get 20% more of them. You also have pummeling, which means that it can create a fissure if 5 boulders hit the same enemy. Now, I can't show you that because there's no enemies to hit and the training dummy does not count as a enemy, so it won't work against the training dummy. But I am going to go ahead and put these points in and show you what the difference is between these points for the boulder frequency and the fall speed, and what it's like not having them. So first we'll start with what it's like not having them. We're going to go ahead and put in the points for Unyielding Storm so that we can cast it. So here's an idea of how fast it goes when we have no fall speed added and no frequency. I cast it, you'll see they come down. They actually don't fall that fast. This animation where it's all blurry like that is a little messed up. It's not supposed to look like that. It's more like these other ones. And then you'll also notice that they come down. I didn't count how many, but there's a few of them per second. Then if we take the fall speed and we go ahead and compare that with 100% increased fall speed, you should notice a definite difference here. We take that, look at that. You can see they are coming down much, much faster. Does it make a difference? Kind of. While if you're kiting and all the enemies are following you and you have this as a cast and forget where you're just leading them behind you, it really doesn't matter how fast they come down, because they're all going to get hit anyways, because it's hitting the area directly behind you, and that's where the mobs are as they follow you. But the boulder frequency with Stormfront can be very important. So we're going to go ahead and throw 4 points in this as well and see if you can notice a difference with that. If you notice, they're not only coming down faster, but there is more of them. I'm not going to slow this down and count exactly how many there are, or maybe I will and I'll tell you. The answer, there was 36 avalanches that I counted in the original clip, and then there were 42 in the boulder frequency clip, which means that there was a difference of about 6, which is roughly 1/6 of it, or about 18% total, which means that I believe that you really do get 20% more of them. It does function as it should. If those are the exact numbers, I don't know. It kind of got blurry when there was a whole bunch falling down and the animations got mixed, but it was roughly 36 of them in the first way and 42 boulders hitting with the 20% boulder frequency. But moving on, we have Dead of Winter, which increases the freeze rate multiplier. Very nice. You also have Alpine Guide, which has a chance to summon an additional boulder if you crit. You can get up to 100% chance. Unfortunately, the new boulder cannot crit, which means you can't get an infinite chain of them going, which is good and bad. The problem with it is that if you build into it to get to 100% crit chance so you can get an additional boulder, that your crit chance is kind of wasting the fact that that extra boulder doesn't get to crit, so it doesn't really do that much damage. So was it really worth it? Probably not. There's a few things that have been built around that, like Halvar's set has been built into that, and it's actually quite useful, and it was very viable, especially when there was an infinite loop that they had going where something about this set didn't have a cooldown and you could get a whole bunch of them just going over and over and over again. But either way, it's something that I would like to see changed where the second boulder can crit, and it's just a known fact that it can't proc. That would be something I would really like to see, because if you build into a 100% chance crit for something to be able to summon another one, I would like to see a 2-for-1 boulder every time that's doing the same amount of damage. Maybe it would be OP, maybe, you know, doubling your damage with just 3 points is a little OP, but I've seen skills and nodes in other games that can give you 100% more damage with just 1 point, so I would like to see it change to that. It also just feels better when you see 2 crits for 1 cast versus seeing a crit and then just a boulder hit for a weak amount of damage. We then have Explosive Impact, and this increases Avalanche and the boulder impact area. Now what it means by that is the Avalanche actually will cast in a larger area, so the boulders come down in a larger area, and then the boulders actually impact a larger area, so you get more hits and you have more AoE. And then we have Unpredictable. Now this increases just the avalanche area. This means that avalanches can basically go from one side of your screen to the other and fall anywhere in there. This makes it harder to hit single targets, because now that they can fall in a larger area, it's less likely to go where you're aiming. Therefore, the boulders which didn't get an increased area on impact size just have a wider range, which basically means you're just making it to where you don't have to aim, and hopefully you hit the target. Kind of like a shotgun effect. I've never put points into this because I've never seen a use for it. I would like to know where my boulders are going to go and try and kite my mob straight into them. We then have Mountain's Fury, and this gives us boulder impact area. Now this is important because this increases the AoE of the skill itself, which means that you can hit more mobs at once with the same boulder, and it means you are more likely to hit that single target. Even if you accidentally aim a little outside of the hit area, you can increase that hit area and now get the hit. We then also have Frost, which turns all the physical damage into cold. This also means that all the increased stun chance will give you freeze rate multiplier, which isn't as effective as the vice versa, because you can get more freeze rate multiplier in the tree. You only get about half the stun chance, but it's still something. Alright, and then we have Frost, and Frost converts all of your physical damage into cold damage, and it also changes all of the increased stun chance that you have taken inside of the skill tree into freeze rate multiplier. Now for me, I would never go and take the stun chance inside of the tree to convert it to freeze rate, because one, you can get 200% freeze rate multiplier just in the dead of winter, and if you have to work your way down all the way to the stun chance, you can only get 75% here, and 75% is nothing. These points here are worth twice as much, and there's more important areas once you've built into that much freeze rate multiplier than trying to convert the stun chance. Now if it converted stun chance outside of the skill tree like you had on gear, that would be cool. I'd really like to see that. I'd really like to see a lot of skills like this kind of have that interaction with gear, to where if you put stun chance on gear, you could get it converted inside of a skill tree. But of course, I could also see how that could become extremely OP with some things such as CCs. Then we also have Frost Touch, and this means that there's a chance for a boulder to leave behind frozen ground. You can get up to 100% chance for this with every boulder, and this is going to be ground that basically looks like you've placed snow, like it snowed on the ground, and this will have a chance to chill enemies every second that are on it or pass through it. Then with 3 points in Shatter Shot, you can get up to a 60% more damage against frozen enemies. Now, I really honestly believe they should change this to chilled enemies, because one, enemies don't stay frozen very long. Two, this is basically useless against bosses, because bosses are just not going to freeze, especially in the high empowered monos when it's very hard. If you had a skill like Snap Freeze, and you could time it to where you knew you were going to get a stun for a couple of seconds on a boss, and you aimed Avalanche to hit them during those couple of seconds, it would be more useful in multiplayer. This could definitely be more useful if you're playing with mages that you know that can freeze. But for the most part, I still think this should be changed to either frozen or chilled enemies should have more damage taken by Avalanche, and that is one suggestion I'd really like to see in the future. Of course, this was made way back in the day. And then you have Frosted Font, which increases the frozen ground area by up to 120%. And just to give you an idea of what that frozen ground looks like, we're going to go ahead and make it really big, and I'm going to show you. When we cast this, you now have this huge frozen area. And we're going to go ahead and you can channel this all around, and you can make it look like it's snow. Now, any enemies that go on this will be chilled every second, which is awesome. If you use this as a cast and forget, and you have the chilled ground behind you, enemies behind you that run through it will be chilled, which will slow them down, increasing the gap that you can outrun them, which is really nice for survivability things. And with that, we have covered every node inside of the skill tree. And like I said, I'm not going to go into building specific ways, because I basically already showed you exactly how everything works and how you can build into it. So putting an actual build together is just a combination of all of those things, or doing just one of them. So with that, that will be it for this skill discussion. At the time this goes up, there will not be another vote for another skill. I'm going to go ahead and just do the 5 that are on there and knock those 5 out first. We'll be doing that all this weekend in preparation for the big patch drop that's coming on Monday, which I'm super excited about. I do have some questions for you guys, though, that I would like you to either comment below or hit me up in Discord, or whatever, get a hold of me however you please. Is that when patch day comes, what would you guys like from me? Would you rather me spend the first day getting a couple builds together, maybe a build based around the new Stormcrow skill, and get a build based around the new Zombie skill? Or would you guys rather I just streamed for 24 hours straight and we just hung out in a stream together and didn't even worry about doing a YouTube video until a couple of days after the patch releases? I've been on the fence about which one to do. Maybe do the build with zombies live on stream, but then recording it would have to be done afterwards, and after a 24-hour stream, I can tell you I'm not going to be awake enough to put a build guide together, so I'll more than likely go to bed, and it would be a couple days. So if you guys would rather I streamed, or if you'd rather I just made some videos right off the bat and streamed later in the week, I did take the whole week off next week so that I can be here with you guys for this patch launch, because I am super excited about it. But again, I don't know which one you guys want more. Do you want the build videos, or do you want videos of the new content, or would you rather I streamed live for you guys and we just hung out together for the first couple days of the patch? Either way, let me know, and as always, stay safe, travelers.